Let me introduce our first panel. From one side to a global scale, a playbook for digital transformation. Marius Schmidt, Head of Operational Excellence, DMG Mori.
Marius, maybe you could start us off just by telling us a little bit about DMG Mori. What's the product you produce, and could you tell us a little bit about the nature of your operation?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone, my name is Marius Schmidt, I'm from DMG Mori. Maybe some of you know us or have our machines in your shop floors. This can very well be. We're a world-leading machine tool manufacturer, located headquartered in both Germany and also Japan. Our company has a global revenue of approximately 3.2 billion euros. Just for reference, 13,000 employees across the world, presence in 43 countries. And yeah, we have and I looked it up this morning, quite a big variety of products, so 54 product lines, just for complexity. And what do we do? Tooling machines, as I said, so turning and milling, but also meanwhile advanced technologies like ultrasonic, surface treatments, additive manufacturing, and on top of that, of course, like service and spare parts for our customers and helping them also to start the digitization journey. Yeah.
So not a simple product. Lots that goes into building these.
Yeah, I mean, it's technologically very advanced, I would say, and the ones that have our machines, they might know that. And I mean, turning milling it's like one heart of manufacturing, right? And on the other hand, for us internally, of course, the variety of production is quite high. And I always like to give an example, like our smallest machine are maybe like a small car size. The biggest machines are bigger than a one family house. Yeah? I mean, the machines that come from the south of Germany, the biggest one, you can machine parts of a length of 10 meters. Yeah? So that's like, it's just big.
Yeah, huge.
Up to 40 tons. So what you want.
So now you started your journey with Tulip. This has been what, maybe 5-6 years ago?
I started in 2019, and Tulip came like half a year after I started my job in DMG Mori. And yeah, we had the big challenge: how do we bring this into our operations?
And maybe we could, for the audience here today, maybe let's start by bookmarking this experience. So, how did you get started? Where are you today? And then let's like dig into a little bit of the journey between here and there. So when you got started with Tulip, how did you guys get started?
Yeah, maybe just for reference, I would maybe put it vice versa. So where are we today? So globally, so we're kind of twofold. Yeah, you have DMG and the Mori part, which is culturally we're forming one global company. But we're still from a tradition. We joined 2009 the forces of these two parts of the company, and I'm taking care of this European former DMG part. So under with my support, I have 9 production plants, and in total some units using Tulip. How many deployments do we have? It's 14 right now on this European and Chinese side. So 14 units and factories are using Tulip. And we have built more than 300 apps that are on a weekly usage, and we have deployed all over our organization. On the European side, more than 2,300 stations, so physical contact points for Tulip. 2,300, which is quite a large scale.
Yeah, not small. 2,000 is big. So that's where you are today.
Yeah.
How did this whole thing start? Let's maybe go back to 2019 when you were 6 months into the company and tasked with this the head of global operational excellence, which maybe we should talk about as well. But you're tasked with this charter of, hey, we're partnering with this company, Tulip. What are we going to do? How did you think about it, and how did you get this started?
It was, I mean, I remember, and maybe most of you know, but DMG Mori, we're a partner of Tulip, so we are very well connected together. We announced the partnership at the EMO Trade Fair 2019 in Hanover, and it was like, that was after a first proof of value. Yeah? So there was a discussion. We knew that our shop floors are very paper-based. The more you go to the real value creation, the more paper you find, the more you see that there is like inefficiency, because paper at the end of the day, it's kind of an indicator for inefficiency. And we wanted a solution for that. And after also some investigation and some trips of our executive board, we came up with a Tulip approach. And we did a proof of value in one factory, and we said, okay, let's prove that digitization with Tulip can bring us value. And there was a pre-assembly area for spindles, motor spindles for our CNC machines. It's a tacted assembly, so a sequenced one where two lines go, rotor, stator go through, then they are like married into one motor spindle. And it was 17 workstations, everything paper-based documentation, of course, like automated system to move things, conveyor belts. But we said, okay, let's digitize it. And it took us 3 weeks with the support of Tulip to digitize it, involving also the people on the shop floor. And afterwards we saw, wow, this has power. Yeah? And we announced the partnership. We said we want to go this way. And right after we announced that in September 2019, we did a big training. And the big training was, at that time, 5 production plants, 4 central units, including our central IT, our central quality, etc. In one room, that was pre-COVID, so 40 people in a room, some trainers, learn how Tulip works, and for 1 week, and afterwards we said, okay, it's not just enough to learn how Tulip works, but you need to learn how you develop it. And that's a bit what you said before in your opening speech. I mean, you can do waterfall with big monolithic systems for the shop floor, but unless you have really the specification, processes will have changed again. So we said, don't just learn the tool, you need to learn how to apply it.
Yeah.
And that's why we did I always call it factory week. So we said, okay, we split the big group of 40 people into 3 small groups. We go to factories, we ask the people, what are your problems? And we're going to solve them with Tulip.
Yeah.
And so day by day, we started in the morning, okay, problem hypothesis, building apps. In the afternoon, go to the operator, say, look, this is my first hypothesis.
Yeah.
Does this work? What do you think? Does it solve the problem? Does it help you? And I don't know how it's in Hungary, but German engineers are very proud, and they don't want to go with the first shitty draft to the shop floor and say, look, this is what I have built. Yeah? They would like to have it final built. But this helped us to start changing the mindset, from classic, finalize, specify everything to agile development. And
it's such an interesting transition, and it's so important because most of us are engineers, and you give us tools, and it's like, shut the door, turn off the lights, let me build the perfect thing that I want to build. This idea of taking people and saying, and it's really fundamental to the agile way of working, but saying, hey, look, we have a hypothesis, we've talked to the operator, we understand who our customer is and the problem we're trying to solve. Let's prototype it, and then not a week later, a month later, 6 months later when it's perfect, but the same day, go get the information, work for a couple of hours, and then show them the results of the work and ask, is this moving in the right direction? Is this solving the problem that we've identified? Is fundamentally a different way of thinking about deploying IT systems within operations. And I think, this approach, I'm just curious, it's so fundamental, but from a cultural perspective, how did you get people to make this leap? Like, how did you tell people that, no, this rapid agile way of working is going to be a more efficient way of working, and it's going to lead to a better outcome? Like, what kind of internal salesmanship did you have to do to make this happen?
I think the good thing is that I didn't have to do salesmanship, because we gave the tool to the people, and I sometimes give the power to the people, and they know their problems best. Mm-hmm. So, and this is what I said, we enabled them to use the tool and told them, you do have a continuous improvement process in place. You know where your problems are. Use this tool to fix them. Yeah. So our approach was very decentral, very agile and dynamic. But it ended up that whenever, my role is I'm central coordinating this. So whenever I went to a factory, they came look, Marius, what I've done. I've built this application or that application, or this. We've not using this anymore because we found out this is not bringing value to us. So it created such a dynamic by itself that I didn't have to do any salesmanship, but the people were so creative and using the tool that management, workers' councils, all stakeholders saw, wow, there is something going on. Yeah, and this kind of went into a loop and into a positive loop.
Interesting. And so the approach that you've outlined, it was a train the trainer event, and then you went, and that was educating people on the fundamentals of the tool. A few days spent on that, and then back going to Gemba, going to where the work is happening, talking to the people who are actually creating the value, doing the work, understanding the problems, iterating quickly. I'm curious. I think first let's talk about your role independent of Tulip. Like, what is the Center of Operational Excellence, and how do you fit within DMG Mori? Can you give us some advice on what makes an effective Center for Operational Excellence? And then I have some other questions, but let's get to this one first.
So we are, if you want to understand my role, you need to understand us as a company. And what I said before, we are like a company that was put together out of individual companies over the time. Yeah, so there was in the core, you had like our milling machine with Deckel and Maho, you had the turning machines with Gildemeister. So over the time, these individual companies went together, and then at 2009 started to join with the Japanese side. But what does this mean? This means that we are not one organic grown company with one culture. Yeah? I mean, I even don't believe if you grow that you will have the same culture in every factory. Just the fact that you're in another country, region, whatever, is different cultures. But we had very different cultures. And we were quite different cultures and different companies, but also very competitive internally. Yeah? This was something that we encouraged in the past. And if you come now and you say, okay, please digitize your processes, and you want to standardize them, you come to the point where you find that on the very high degree of shop floor, your processes are different. But if you want to digitize them, you need to harmonize them. And that's for me something that turned out quite fast after I started. That was one of the main challenges. So I started then in 2019. I take care not only of Tulip as a digital tool, but also of other digital tools to supply value for our companies and factories. But also I take care of like classic continuous improvement, idea management. I'm putting emphasis on operation strategies, so trying to put all these bricks together and provide value to our factories.
Yeah. I think it's also pretty fundamental, this idea of combining, the technology that. Maybe let me take a step back. I think oftentimes what we hear, and we've all studied lean, we all are familiar with the Toyota production system, but a lot of times you hear, and I was actually at a lean event just not even a week ago with Jim Womack, who's like the godfather of the lean movement. But a lot of times what you'll hear in these types of continuous improvement, lean transformation initiatives is you'll hear, is this a problem that we should solve using lean principles, or full stop, should we take a different and separate, not lean approach, which is the application of technology to solve this problem? And it is fundamentally like the wrong way to think about these things. I think one of the things that you pointed out here that I've seen time and time again is that you really need to combine. If you digitize a process to digitize it, but you're not thinking about improving the fundamentals of that process, you are automating waste. You've done nothing. If you simply lean out your processes, but you're not taking advantage of the modern set of tools that are available in the market, then like at a minimum, it's a suboptimal outcome, right? So this combining of the two in a single office and a single motion, I think, is pretty fundamental.
Yeah.
Would you say that this is a common approach, or is DMG Mori kind of at the avant-garde, at the leading in this space? Would you say?
I don't know if we're leading this, but we have decided that these two worlds belong together. This also ends up in our internal training program, which we do not just call it Lean Six Sigma, we call it Digital Lean Six Sigma, what we train internally, because we said digital tools can be, they don't have to, but can be a proper solution to first identify problems and later solve them. But for that you need to know the tools. Like if you don't know the tools, you can be the best lean person, but you will not end up finding the possible best solution for that. And what you said, I think it's what I have seen also in my almost 20 years now of manufacturing, that if you come and there's new technology, you start piloting, you do a proof of concept, and then it's like everybody's excited, oh, the supplier has done a proof of concept, you go back and it's like, okay, now so what? And nobody really knows how to continue, and then should we do a specification and go on the market again and ask, and you don't really start, and you do not really have like a way to go. And I think this is where, if you combine these two worlds, and this is what we try hard, yeah, it's like it's not working perfect, I don't say that, but we try to combine these worlds to say, look, we want to improve our processes, and digital tools are an option in our toolbox to do that. And I think this is where you need to understand, if you would do that, you have the chance to link these tools into your standard process.
Yep.
And the fact that, for example, with Tulip, you can do this agile and like try out, learn, validate, you have a better chance to really find the problem and really solve the real problems on the shop floor. Because otherwise, I've seen this many times, you have like fancy screens and tools and whatever, and then you come 2 weeks later and things are off. You know, it's like, okay, it was nice, but obviously it didn't solve the problem.
Well, that's
and maybe one remark, you will also find in our production facilities screens that are off, because we thought we find a problem, but the guys on the shop floor obviously said like, no, nice idea, but it doesn't really solve a problem for me. But then in the next moment you go around the corner and they have new screens. And it's like, hey, what is that? You didn't tell me. It's like, yeah, but that was the real problem. Okay.
That's one of the things that I love about manufacturing operations. It's such an honest place. There's no room for BS. You know, if you say, "Hey, look, I've got this, digital initiative. It's going to make everybody's life better. You know, the CEO signed off on it. The consultant recommended it. So here you go. Just don't think and adopt this." They're going to take a look at it. They're going to put it down and they're going to do their jobs, right? There is like zero, unless you are adding value to the work that's being done, people just won't use it. And I think there's just something so pure and honest about that. I want to double click into one of the comments you made earlier, because you said something kind of interesting. You said DMG Mori is all of these different cultures and unique operations all over the world with a presence in 43 countries, I think you said. But then you said something, you said, like, everyone's different, and yet you also need to try and harmonize this. And there's this tension between embracing all of, like, every site is different and the processes are a little bit different, but then there's also this idea of standard work and trying to standardize process across facilities. And I'm just curious to hear your perspective. How do you reconcile the reality that there is this extremely heterogeneous environment in which you're deploying these systems, oftentimes for good reason, with this desire to optimize and create a single most efficient way of doing the work?
Yeah. I think this is a huge challenge. I mean, if you look at a company of our size with our model of operating, this is like one of the biggest challenge. If you look at the very top process, ERP, it's like okay-ish to do that. Yeah, we have global template and we can use that. But then it's what I said before, the closer you go to the real operations, the more different things will be. Yeah. And you can try to a certain degree to templatize that, but people will find alternative ways of doing this. And it's like, some people might call this shadow IT. Yeah, you will have people in your technology departments, work preparations, they can build software. They just open whatever free web-based programming software and they will build something to solve their problems. Yeah. So this happens, and I think we need to open the eyes and not sit in our IT control tower and say we're going to templatize and build that. So you need to try a way to allow that, but within certain boundaries, and that's where we went with Tulip. And what we did is our approach was, I said it, very decentral, very fast. Yeah, it's our advantage as discrete manufacturer in a not regulated industry. Of course, we need to apply certain laws and ISO rules and norms. That we do. But like the way, how do we get there, it's kind of in our hands. This is a big advantage for us to drive certain activities like citizen development. And what we did is we gave this tool to the people, they started to build things, and we created a network of these people. So we said, okay, look, in every factory there's people building apps and solving problems. Let's connect them. And we started Exchange, and that was the moment when suddenly they said, you're doing the same, I had the same problem. You know, it's what I said initially. In the past we were very like competition and nobody asked on the details because it was paper-based, you could do your Word template, but suddenly it was like, let's digitize. What are you doing? I have the same problem, let's do it together. So the most positive way of doing this is if people come to you from the operations and say, let's standardize. Yeah, then you don't have to be the one from the central and say, yeah, I'm the guy that's trying to harmonize and standardize your processes. But the people from the bottom, they say, we believe it's good to have a standard. So what happened? They exchange and say, okay, we have a solution there. We also have a solution. Let's bring it together and let's build a standard out of that. And that's what we're doing. Yeah?
And so it's interesting here because we started, there's maybe 3 pillars to this thing. If we say there's the lean process improvement mindset, there's the digital fluency and taking advantage of the modern tools that are available here, and then there's also this profound cultural impact, which is like taking all of the people who are employed in this, bringing them together and making sure that they can share best practices, not from a top-down, necessarily forcing adherence to standard process as defined by you pick the site, you pick the leader who decided that would be the standard, but rather getting real-time visibility into the work that's being conducted and then comparing empirically, look, same process, throughput here is much lower, defect rate here is much higher. Over here they have the same process, much better on all metrics. Maybe there's some things we could learn here in creating this pull. That's pretty interesting. Now,
but maybe one comment
please.
there, because in order to have this discussion, you must. So I think a mistake, and we saw it in the beginning. We said like, okay, you're the Tulip guy or girl or whatever. Yeah, it's like, and then they became the person that know the tool, and they started building these things. And suddenly people approached them. I have an idea. Let's build an app because we want to solve a problem. Yeah. And suddenly these persons, these app builders, became the process consultants. And they were like approaching to me, was like, but I'm not in charge of doing this. I'm not capable of doing this. Yeah, I can build an app, but that's what you said in the beginning. I can just digitize the process, but who's reviewing the process?
Yeah.
So what we did later, and we were so fast in the beginning that we ended up in certain moments and at this point, what we did is we brought them together with the process owners and the continuous improvement teams. Because they are the ones that can define these KPIs. Yeah. They are the ones that look and can compare. And you need to have these capabilities in this journey, because otherwise you will digitize things, but nobody's really challenging, are you digitizing the right things?
Yeah, the goal of digitization is not to digitize. Yeah. The goal of digitization is to understand where there are opportunities to improve process real time, and then to take action on that, to actually improve the process so you can actually improve the way that things are being done. Maybe we take a moment now. You said DMG Mori in 2009. You had the Japanese company and the German company merged to form, DMG, and Mori first merged to form DMG Mori. And from what I understand, and maybe as context here, a lot of these questions that I ask are different answers. There are different answers in different environments, and different cultures, and different operations, and different verticals. And it's not necessarily to say there's a one right answer to any of these things, but rather to understand what is the right approach in the context that you have here. And I think DMG Mori offers kind of an interesting case study in this, because what you've described so far, I would say, if we think about this on a spectrum from top-down, maybe IT-led implementation to a completely decentralized bottom-up implementation, we've mostly been talking over here. But there's also this other model, and I'm wondering, from what I understand, if we were to zoom in on the Japanese side of DMG Mori, we would see something that's a little bit further over on this side of the spectrum. And I'm wondering if you could maybe tell me a little bit about how, and as context here, we did the initial training event, the Train the Trainer event. We went on site. What happened 6 months later? Well, COVID happened. And so some of this may be cultural, some of this may be just a function of the way world events sort of evolved. But the technology was introduced over in Japan. We didn't have the opportunity to go do a Train the Trainer event. And perhaps if we had, maybe things would be different. But that's not what happened. And the adoption on the Japanese side, I think, is very different than the German side. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, on the German side, like European side, we have factories in Germany, in Poland, in Italy. We have colleagues in China. So I always say Europe and China, because the Chinese factory is like organizationally reporting to us. But from a culture point of view, to Germany, Poland, Italy, citizen development works very well. I would say. So this is why we had this very decentralized approach, and this is why we have today like these 2,300 stations in place. On the Japanese side, they have all over. We have 14 sites using Tulip. They have 8 at the moment. Yeah? This is just to the fact that they have, in general, less organizational units, which is okay. But on the other hand, they have a very high amount of stations, which is like 1,200, 1,300 deployed. It's half of us, but when you look at their rate of usage, it's super high. Yeah? What have they done? They have built central apps that are being deployed to the shop floor with a central team of 4 people. So very different to us. Yeah? So not saying, here's the tool, use it, solve your problems, but saying like, okay, we want to digitize certain process. In their case, it was mainly like quality check sheets that they digitized, and they started and they brought this to the shop floor. Of course, with the implication to also digitize the shop floor in terms of user interface. Yeah, they brought like more than 1,000 iPads to the shop floor. Yeah, which is something that at some point you need to want to invest that. Yeah, I mean that's what is always also the question, but. Just the fact to enable the people on the shop floor to have a user interface, a central team that was providing applications, brought them to where they are today, and it's very successful. Yeah? And the small team, it's super dynamic, they are very experienced, but again, it's 4 full-time people building apps. On our side, we have 0 people building full-time apps. Yeah? We are citizen developers, and this is it's a complete different approach. Both things work, but I think it needs to fit to your culture, and maybe it's a company culture, maybe it's a country culture. This can also be, but I think there is no right or wrong.
It's super interesting, right? Because here we have these 2 almost extreme opposite approaches to deploying these systems. Where on the one hand, it's no one's job to deploy Tulip applications in the AG. It's just when you have a problem, it's just the tool you reach for. And in a similar way, like there's no one's job no one's job today in any operation is to build Excel spreadsheets. But guess what? There's a lot of Excel spreadsheets. Why? Because we need to capture information, we need to understand data, and we need to look at trends. And so what is it? It's just the tool that people reach for. And maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet, or maybe it's a WhatsApp group, or maybe it's a Slack thread, or a Teams channel, or a email group report that gets sent out. But the point is, people reach for the tools that are available, that they have to solve the problems. You mentioned, some who will go to free web-based tools and say, hey, look, I can build something that solves this problem. So this is the approach we have on the one side, no single owner, and then on the CO side, you've got full-time citizen developers. I'm curious, do you have any perspective on how, the level of consultation they bring into the shop floor? Do they still work in this agile way that we've been saying, or are they or is it more, for whatever reason, right or wrong, more of like, hey, this is how we want to execute this process. We've done our homework, and make sure that you follow it in the following way. Do you have any perspective on that?
So based on my experience, Japanese culture in general is more. They accept much more like minimum viable products than German culture does. So what we see is that they build an application, very basic, they bring it to the shop floor, and then they start pivoting from there also. Which is, but not in the way of saying we're doing it agile, but it's just the way they do it. So they deliver a product that solves exactly that problem. Yeah? German people would end up writing the big backlog and saying like, okay, we also need to consider this case and that edge case and what if, and wouldn't it be nice to have this one? So you end up with something very big, whereas Japanese colleagues, they're very fast in doing this and bring it to the shop floor and learn based on that. Which everything has pros and cons, right? So if you do that, you're very fast and also building up certain technical depths, yeah? And if you wouldn't do it, if you don't think it through where you want to end up at some point. And this is what we also see, that to a certain degree they're facing challenges, how this has been deployed and how to operate that. Yeah? On the other hand, our approach is the same. Just the fact that we have like 300 apps on weekly usage, you need to operate and maintain them. Yeah. So the question, how do you do that? So both things have pros and cons, but you end up also in a similar problem.
Well, let's talk for a moment about, if you could say, top 2 or 3 things that have changed at DMG Mori as you've implemented this system, as you've implemented Tulip, as you've adapted the way that you work using these new digital tools? And maybe, 3 things that have changed for the better, and then maybe 3 things that didn't go so well, because we all know that happens as well,
Yeah. So for me, what I like a lot is that the digital journey for me, it's sometimes difficult to start because you end up in general holistic discussions, right? It's like, it's the same if you write a specification for a system, you write, you ask, you write, and and everything you write will not be until the last very detail. You will discover in any way when you deploy that you missed something or you misunderstood something.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the beauty is, and this is what our organization has learned, if you iterate and if you go through these iteration cycles, you give yourself the chance to learn in a structured way. And you accept that you don't know everything and you don't pretend to know everything. Yeah? I mean, our board and management always wants the Gantt chart. Okay, when is this ready? Which is the scope? What is specification?
Yeah.
How much do you need? It's like, and I tell them like, I can do that, but I will lie to you anyway. It's like, yeah. But if you want me to do that, of course, I make you a slide.
Yeah.
So we have learned that, and I think this is extremely powerful, because for me, this is a key for digital transformation. We don't know, like people on the shop floor, sometimes they don't know about which data they need. They don't know where the data is coming from. We don't talk one data language. We don't know how to integrate hardware. We don't know how to automate maybe process with backend systems. We don't know about certain interfaces. So there's so much we don't know, but we need to start knowing that, unless we want to give it to an external that does everything for us, but then we lose the whole control over our processes. And I think this is the beauty of for us Tulip to enable our organization step by step to learn during this transformation journey. So this is really, really positive.
Yeah.
One thing that we see as a challenge is what I said before, and it's again about data, just the fact that we gave this tool to the people and they started building apps, and I always call it full stack app builder, and at that time there were no custom user roles in Tulip. I don't know how much you know about this, but it's like, okay, I want you to build an app, so at the end you end up being admin. and like, yeah, they can do everything, so it's fine. But what does it mean that people that are not trained in like data management, standardization, programming, they start building apps? They will find their way. But the outcome is, as what I said, that we have a very fragmented picture of apps in the way how they are built, which data they contain, maybe there's similar data and so. And we're collecting now these items. We try to identify where similar data objects, how can we bring them together and standardize them? Because we believe the data that is there is valuable for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I think so much of this depends on we learn through experimentation, and the cost of the experiment informs whether or not that experiment and the learnings that would result, could be a success, could be a failure, justify the investment, right? And so, what do you want to do? If we say the biggest experiment, let's say like an MES implementation in kind of a traditional way, this is call it a 4-year experiment, we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, we're going to make a lot of people's life very difficult for an extended period of time, but, it's an experiment. So let's make sure that we understand the requirements, let's make sure that we understand the justification, let's make sure that we have an ROI that we can associate with this, and then let's conduct this experiment, and here we go. Or an ERP implementation, I would say, would be an even more extreme example of this. So that's a kind of an extreme example of a high cost of experimentation. An example of an extremely low cost of experimentation is, I notice that I'm getting more defects at the end of the line. I'm going to print out a piece of paper. Every time you get a defect, mark number, like tally it, and then write down here in the scratch section why that part was defective. And you're going to do that for a full day. And at the end of the day, I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to see what I can learn from this experiment. The cost of the experiment was almost zero. And it's highly probable that you're going to learn something very valuable here. And I think a core part of Tulip is we think about this as reducing the cost of experimentation for these things. So you can have a hypothesis, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, but you can spend an afternoon and you can build an application that's going to get you the information to validate or invalidate your hypothesis. And then based on that information, you can apply those learnings and continue to develop here. And I think that that's really the process in a very tactical way can feel a bit messy. And for those of us who are, like control and want to understand everything that's happening in the complex adaptive environment and system that is a manufacturing operation, this can be a bit uncomfortable. But some of what I'm hearing from you is, we, on a level, we have to be open to embracing this kind of uncertainty, because whether we acknowledge it or not, it's there, right? And so being comfortable with a little bit of this uncertainty and being open to learning that results, I think, is one of the things that I'm hearing from you as an important point.
I think for us, I have a lot this discussion of what is this specific app bringing for an ROI? Like, is this valuable for me or not? And what we try here is we use our existing continuous improvement approach, because like any process change, it's something that you normally do on a daily basis in your organizations, right? It's not that suddenly there's Tulip and you're like, I can change processes. This is not the case.
Yeah.
You're doing this day by day. And in many cases, you do have a part of the organization or certain people that have skills to support you there. And I think this is very valuable to get them on board. And in our case, we try to approach it in the same way, to say, okay, look, you want to build an app, you want to change the process. What's your improvement, your saving out of that? Because you have an hypothesis for a problem. What's your cost of building the application, or maybe you need some hardware or whatever. Yeah. And at the end, we call it a 12-month net benefit. Yeah. And then if it's positive, you know that it brings value. If not, it doesn't bring value. What happens? People are sometimes so fast that they're like, I didn't calculate the net benefit. It's like, okay, well, you changed the process, but don't worry. And then it goes back to what I said in the beginning. But if the people use the app, my understanding meanwhile is there will be value, otherwise the people will not use the application.
Yeah.
But what does this require? This requires that the organization and also the management needs kind of to accept that, tolerate it, that this happens. Yeah? If you would go afterwards to the people and say, you didn't calculate the net benefit, I switch off this app, this is the worst thing you can do, right? Yeah. Because then you kill everything that you have built up until then.
Yeah.
So what it also requires, and this is where we were extremely lucky, and are extremely lucky, we have a super strong push from our executive board. Yeah, they are opening the doors, they have understood that we need to digitize our shop floors, and they have accepted, to a certain degree, that we also can fail. Yeah, and that we will not have for every single thing we do on a daily basis an ROI calculation. And it's what you said before, like I don't ask people, you have made this Excel sheet, where's your ROI if you should have made this Excel sheet? It's like, I don't ask this. Yeah. Because it's a standard tool to solve problems on my shop floor.
Yeah, there's an element of natural selection almost that takes place here. So if we think about, look at where DMG Mori was when you joined 5 years ago. Look at where DMG Mori is today. What are some of the, you're far along on this journey, I would say. What are some of the, what's one or two of the things that are different today and for the better that this approach has made possible?
One key is the cultural change and collaboration between factories and on the shop floors in terms of digital transformation. Because there is no blueprint for your individual company. You need to find your way how to digitize your shop floor. Yeah, and you can go to consultancies, they will tell you something, they will take out models, they will take out the pyramid models of automation, whatever changes IoT. It's fine, but you need to find your way. And what we have done and what we have achieved, we have connected the people that are in positions and have the skills to do that together. And at the end of the day, you can have so much technology at your hand, but you need people implementing it. And I think this is where many things fail. Yeah, like managers come back from congresses or whatever, and they say, look, I've seen this. We had the same. I love the example, collaborative robots. Yeah, we wanted to do that, and I spent a lot of time in trying it out and finding use cases. At some point, we said, let's pause it for the moment. But for me, you need to build up the skills, you need to connect the people, and I think this is what we have done for, you need to enable the people on the shop floor to learn what does it take for your digital journey.
Okay, and last question. If we think about, you're 5 years into this journey, many of the folks here today are meeting Tulip for the first time, or they're just thinking about getting started on this journey. You know, what advice would you have for them? You know, if you were to go back and say, hey, Marius, 5 years ago, do these things or think about these things, you know, what advice would you give to yourself and what advice would you give to our audience today that are just thinking about starting this journey?
So, I mean, I think it's not just a like a Tulip recommendation. I think it's a general like digital transformation of the shop floor recommendation. I would really involve the crucial stakeholders of your company from moment zero, because this will be leading to success or miss success. Why? Because in our example, we had in the very first training where you and me were in this room with 40 people, we had the central IT, we had certain central functions, we had our workers' council. I don't know how in Hungary worker council or labor unions are, but in Germany, if you don't have them on your side, you have a problem. And so we said, look, this is the tool, that's what it is. So all the stakeholders who are in this room, and what I would recommend, and this is what I would change now a bit, I said, I have informed them, so see you later. This is something that I collect now a bit, especially with our IT, because our IT was super busy with SAP Go Live, like everybody was focusing just on SAP. So we were like going, okay, we continue with the Tulip journey, and we're like, yeah, we need to do SAP. And right now we try to bring it together again. So this is what I would really strongly recommend, stay in touch there and make them part of this, because it's transformation and you can just win this together, and all other stakeholders as well. And also, the second point, I think it's about also sponsorship, because during this journey you will have challenges, you will have failing moments, you will have moments where you say, okay, that was not good, and maybe we burned some money. This will happen, because you will have an hypothesis, you will fail. It's about risk mitigation, but also then support of saying, okay, yeah, we missed this chance, we failed, but let's learn from it.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I'm excited about I'm excited to see all of the progress that's been made since the first time, as you mentioned, we were in that room, just starting this journey five years ago or so. And I think more excited to see where you guys are in a couple of years from now, because I know you have some big plans, and I know you guys are, it's a journey, and I don't think this journey has an end. They call it continuous improvement for a reason. It doesn't end. So I'm excited about all the progress you've made. I'm also excited to, continue to learn from you guys as you continue on this journey. So Marius, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for sharing your perspectives. And I'm gonna, at this point, hand it back off to Ferry, and he'll guide us to where we go next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Maybe we have time for one or two questions from the audience. So if you are excited about this journey, this is the right moment to learn from Marius. Please go ahead and ask.
Yes, I had once.
Please also introduce yourself.
I'm Cecilia Medeossi. I'm working for Morgan Advanced Material in Italy. I'm an operational person, and I'm also very interested in continuous improvement. So my question was about, you talk about facilitating the communication and the knowledge sharing, right? What was actually the strategy in doing that? Because it can be something that is easier said than done,
Totally. So I think the challenge that we had on top of that was that we started in autumn 2019 and March 2020. We all know that COVID hit us, and this was a challenge for us. So, for me, two things. One is like allowing communication, and this was for us, or hosting communication. This is our internal Microsoft Teams channel. So we have set up a Teams channel where everybody who got a Tulip training or had trained his or herself with the university in Tulip joined. So we're informing there, we're exchanging, the people have access to certain resources. The second point is like communication internally. We're using our intranet to inform about what is happening, where is it happening, success stories, because you need to share success stories. And third, and this, for me, I always say, got lost a bit during COVID, bring the people physically together in the sense of just spend 2 days somewhere. I mean, with an agenda, but they need to talk to each other. And this is, we believe that in the virtual world, people just connect to each other via a camera. And this is not, I thought it's way easier, but I have learned that this is not the case. So that's why we, meanwhile, try to do minimum once per year. I call it Core Team Summit. So we have our, as I said, we have deployed on our side, the European side, in 14 units, Tulip, and these 14 responsible persons, together with some other support persons, we met 2 months ago in the Tulip office in Munich. And we had an agenda about exchange, information, roadmap, also together with Tulip. But of course, you also go in the evening, you go to drink a beer, and so it's, but that's where the feedback that I get there is not like, I have learned this feature. It's like, it's so good. Suddenly I have a real face that I can talk to. You know, and they go back and they start, no, now I'm in contact with this on a weekly basis because we have the same problem. And I think this is allowing this, yeah, because people will ask, it's this cost, traveling cost, etc., etc. But I believe if you don't do this, and this is not just a Tulip topic, it's about digital journey topic. If you don't do this and bring these people together, you will not really create a community.
Thank you.
Thank you.